never imagined that a simple video from my grandson would be the thing that finally broke me. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was from Tyler, my sweet, quiet grandson who never caused any trouble. I tapped play, smiling without thinking. But the second the video started, my heart dropped. There she was, Melanie. My daughter. My only child. Standing in the middle of the kitchen I paid for, laughing with her friends. I recognized everything, the sparkling marble countertops, the fancy Italian light fixtures. Every single part of that kitchen existed because I paid for it when she couldn't. And still, she stood there, talking like I didn't matter. Oh, please, Melanie scoffed. She's dead weight. I mean, what would she even do if she wasn't living here? She's basically just a guest in her own grave at this point. The room filled with laughter. Ugly, careless laughter. One of her friends even added, well, at least you're doing your good deed letting her stay, right? Exactly, Melanie said, smiling. I pay for everything anyway. I couldn't breathe. Not because she lied, that didn't even sting as much anymore, but because of how she spoke about me. Like I was some sad little woman hanging around, depending on her generosity. She had no idea how wrong she was. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I knew better than to react. Melanie thrived on that. If I showed pain, she'd use it against me later, twist it into something else. I just stared at her frozen image on the screen. This woman, who used to cry in my arms, begging for help when her world fell apart. The woman I helped through everything, 8 years of mortgage payments, credit card debts, groceries, school fees, roof repairs. I gave it all without asking for anything in return. And all I ever asked for was one small guest room in the house I saved. Dead weight. That's what she called me. I felt the blood rush in my ears, but I wasn't shocked, not really. What hurt most was how easily she said it, how freely she made me the punchline of her story. I saved the video. Not to use right away, but for later. I had a feeling I'd need it. I looked around the spotless kitchen, the one I made possible, and, for the first time, it didn't feel like mine. No tears came. No shouting. Just this cold, steady quiet growing inside me. Like a door inside had shut for good. I wiped my hands dry, turned off the phone, and walked slowly to my room. Every step was calm and careful, like I was moving through water. The storm had started, yes, but this time, I was the one steering it. Hours passed. I watched that video over and over, and the heaviness in my chest never left. I sat by the window in my little guest room, or as Melanie liked to say, the small corner I let Mom have. The house looked beautiful from where I sat. I made sure of that. White columns, tall windows, shining floors that looked like they belonged in a magazine. 8 years ago, when Melanie's marriage collapsed and the bank threatened to take the house, she called me in tears. I didn't even hesitate. I cashed out my retirement, sold my condo, and gave her everything I had. To save this place. Back then, she promised, it'll be your home too, Mom. Always. Always. Now that word feels like a cruel joke. For 8 years, I lived here quietly. I never asked for rent, never complained. I paid the mortgage, the taxes, the repair bills. I fixed things when they broke, pipes, the roof, the air conditioning in the dead of summer. I thought I was just being a good mother. I wanted to help my family, to protect Tyler, to feel like I belonged. I stayed out of the way, helped when asked, and made myself small whenever Melanie's voice hinted that I was too much. And still, year after year, her warmth faded. Her thank yous turned into silence. My help became something she expected, something she stopped even noticing. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trimmed hedges. The home I built stood firm and lovely. But inside, something had shifted. I was no longer going to be invisible. The breeze outside made me think of the shrubs in the yard. I still remember planting a few of them myself after the landscaper, who Melanie couldn't afford, gave up and left. It's strange how people forget things like that, like who actually got their hands dirty. The funny part is, I never even needed to live here. I had my own life. I was doing just fine before Melanie pulled me into her world of overdue bills and crying fits. But how could I say no to my daughter? Not when she grabbed my hand, her eyes full of fear, and said, "Please, Mom, I can't do this alone." Now, I look around at the room I've been given, just a bedroom, a tiny sitting area, and a small bathroom tucked in the corner. Melanie always made a point of reminding me how generous it was of her to give me this space. But let's be real, what she called generosity was really my sacrifice. It was my money, my safety net, my freedom that paid for all this. Still, I never corrected her. I let her tell the story the way she needed to, because it was easier that way. Quieter. But now, things feel different. I lean back, hands folded in my lap, and let the storm brewing inside me settle. "Dead weight," I whispered under my breath, tasting the bitterness. "Not anymore." that dead weight? It's about to stand up. The next morning, I found myself helping out at the church community center, folding clothes for a charity drive. The gentle sounds of people chatting and bins softly clinking with donations made me feel oddly peaceful. At least here, people were kind, or at least acted like they were. That's more than I get at home. While I was sorting through a pile of winter coats, Margaret came over. She always had this way of knowing when something was wrong, even if I tried to hide it. "You've been so generous to Melanie all these years, Evelyn," she said softly, giving me that sideways look of hers. "Most people wouldn't have done half of what you've done." I gave her a small smile and waved it off like I always do. "Oh, you know how it is with kids. You just do what you can." But her words stuck with me, sitting heavy in my stomach. Generous. There it was again. People say that word like it's a compliment, like it doesn't cost anything. But it did. It cost me everything, my savings, my independence, even who I used to be. I sat there for years while Melanie spent my money like it was hers, and I said nothing. Margaret kept going, her voice soft but steady. "You've done more than most moms would. Don't let her make you feel like you owe her anything." I looked into her eyes and saw something real, not pity, but understanding. Maybe she didn't know all the details, but she knew enough. "I don't feel owed," I said smoothly, lying like I always do. "I've always been happy to help." She touched my arm gently and said, "Even help has limits, dear." I gave a light chuckle and said I'd keep that in mind, but as I turned back to the clothes, my fingers shook a little. That old ache was back, the one that told me I'd let things go too far for too long. For years, I told myself that Melanie was just stressed, that her sharp tone would soften, that her coldness would melt away with time. I clung to memories of when she was my little girl, the one who held my hand during thunderstorms, the one who cried into my arms after her divorce, telling me I was the only person who ever stayed. But those memories feel far away now, like old photos hidden deep in a drawer. What's left is her sharp tongue, her sense of entitlement, and her careful manipulation. I glanced over at Margaret again. She didn't know that just last night, I saw Melanie mocking me, like I was some old thing she had to put up with. But hearing Margaret say, "You've done enough," gave me a strange kind of peace. She was right. I have done enough. And from now on, enough is exactly what I'm going to give. That evening, I barely made it through dinner before Melanie started her usual show. It was just the two of us. Tyler was over at a friend's place. The table felt too big and too quiet. She finally spoke, gently swirling the wine in her glass like she was preparing to deliver something delicate. I knew that tone too well, and I braced myself. "So," she started, stretching the word like taffy, "we've decided to host a little dinner party next weekend. A few business people and their wives." She gave me one of her polished, fake smiles, the kind she usually saves for strangers. I stayed quiet and nodded. "That sounds nice," I said. She leaned in, lowering her voice just a bit. "It's a bit upscale, though. We want everything to be just right, you understand?" Her voice softened, like she was trying to sound gentle. "So, I think it's best if you stay in your suite during the party," she said, like it was no big deal. "Just so everything flows smoothly." The words hit me harder than I expected. But I didn't let it show. I kept my face calm, hands resting in my lap, and said, "Of course." She smiled, clearly relieved. Like she'd expected me to agree without question. "I knew you'd understand," she said, taking another sip of wine. "You know how these people can be, judgmental. I just don't want anyone making assumptions about our situation." Our situation. That's what I had become. Not her mother. Not family. Just a situation. I looked around the dining room, the soft glow of the chandelier, the shiny wooden table, the elegant chairs. I had paid for all of it. Every piece of this house, every generous thing she gave me, came from my savings. My retirement. My life. But here I was, being quietly tucked away like a broken piece of furniture no one wanted to show. She kept talking, going on about caterers and flower arrangements, not even noticing the silence hanging between us. But I've learned, silence gets to her more than words ever could. She doesn't really see me anymore. I'm not part of her world. I'm just a quiet presence in the guest wing. I fund her dreams, and she expects me to fade into the background. When she finally stopped talking, I stood up slowly. "If you'll excuse me, I'll head to my room." She gave me that sugary smile. "Of course, Mom. Thank you for being so understanding." As I walked back to my suite, my steps were calm, but something inside me had shifted. Something deep. She still believed she was in control, that my silence meant I was okay with everything. That I'd keep helping no matter what. But I'd seen enough. If she thought I was a burden, dead weight, then she wouldn't be carrying me for much longer. In fact, soon she wouldn't be carrying anything at all. The next morning, I left the house early. Melanie didn't notice. She was already wrapped up in her party plans, calling caterers, obsessing over details for people who would forget her name in a week. I, on the other hand, had a different kind of appointment. The law office was small, tucked into a quiet corner at Main and Willow. The bricks were old, ivy curling up the walls. I'd been here before, but never for something quite like this. The receptionist greeted me kindly and walked me back. "Good morning, Evelyn," said Mr. Aldridge, standing up from behind his neat desk. He was calm, polite, in his 60s, a lawyer who liked facts more than drama. Just the kind of person I needed. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice," I said, settling into the chair. "Of course. You sounded determined." I gave a small smile. "I am." He opened a folder and clicked his pen. "You mentioned you'd like to make updates to your estate plan?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I want everything moved into an irrevocable trust. And I want my daughter's name removed. No access. No control." He blinked, but didn't show much surprise. Just raised an eyebrow slightly. "All right. May I ask what prompted this change?" I thought about the video. Still saved on my phone. The sound of Melanie's laughter. The way she mocked me like I was nothing. But I only said, "It's time to protect my future." He nodded once. That was enough for him. "And your grandson? Do you want to name him as a beneficiary?" I paused. Tyler was different. Still young, still easily influenced by his mother. But he was the one who sent me the video. The one who noticed something was wrong. "Yes," I said quietly. "But with conditions. Not until he's 25, and with oversight until then." Mr. Aldridge jotted down notes, then looked up again. "This means moving all your financial accounts, the house title, and insurance under the trust. It also protects you from any claims later about being pressured." "Good," I said. "That's exactly what I want." He gave a small, knowing smile. "You're being very thorough, Mrs. Harper." "I've been patient long enough," I said calmly. "Now, I'm going to be careful." As I signed the papers, I felt something new inside me, peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't giving in. I was choosing. Planning. Melanie had no clue that anything had changed. She still saw me as the quiet, aging mother who would nod and smile no matter what. Let her believe that, for now. That afternoon, I sat alone in the garden. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the lawn I had paid landscapers to save. The air was still. Peaceful. But deep inside me, a quiet strength had taken root. And this time, it wasn't going anywhere. The roses in the garden still looked perfect, bright, neat, and well kept. But to me, they felt empty now. Like everything else in this house, they looked beautiful on the outside, but underneath, it all felt fake. I pulled my sweater tighter. As a cool breeze brushed past, and my mind wandered back to all the years that brought me here. I remembered holding baby Tyler late at night while Melanie cried herself to sleep after her divorce. I remembered every time she called me, panicked and overwhelmed, when the bills piled up and the bank threatened to take the house. And I always came. I used my savings, gave up my peace of mind, quietly, without complaint, because that's what mothers do. I raised her once. And after her husband left, I raised her again. I even helped raise her son. But somehow, in her mind, the story changed. Suddenly, I was the one who needed her. The first time she joked at a dinner party, "Oh, we had to make space for Mom since she needed somewhere to go," I laughed along like everyone else. But inside, it stung. And those little comments never stopped. Always polite. Always smiling. But always reminding me that I was a guest in a house I'd saved. A house that only still existed because I emptied every account I had to keep it. From the kitchen, I heard Melanie talking loudly on the phone, probably bossing around the florist again. She was too wrapped up in her party plans to notice anything else. She didn't even know I hadn't paid the mortgage last month. Still thought I was covering it like always. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I felt something different. That voice in my head, the one that always told me to keep the peace, was finally quiet. "I've done enough," I whispered, saying it to the roses like I needed them to hear it too. For the next few days, I moved slowly and quietly. Melanie barely noticed. She was too busy obsessing over flower colors and dinner menus. I let her think I was still managing her money, still fixing things behind the scenes. But every morning, after she left for her meetings and Tyler went off to school, I sat at my little desk and started taking back control. I went through my accounts, my investments, even the rental property she didn't know I had. I moved everything into a trust. Mr. Aldridge, my lawyer, handled it all quickly and quietly. Then one afternoon, while Melanie spent hours at the spa making herself perfect for her big night, I went to the bank. I hadn't opened that safe deposit box in years. It held everything: my late husband's insurance papers, old deeds, and copies of every single payment I ever made for this house. Mortgage checks, tax papers, repair bills. All in my name. I made clean copies and placed them in a folder labeled Control Documents, just in case Melanie ever decided to play dirty. When I got back home, the sun was going down. Melanie barely looked up. She was lounging on the couch, laughing loudly on speakerphone with one of her rich friends. I paused on the stairs when I heard her say, "She's so low maintenance. Honestly, it's not a big deal having her here. She keeps to herself, helps out a little. No trouble at all." I stood there for a moment, quiet, listening, not sad, not angry. Just clear. So clear. Low maintenance, she called me. And maybe that's what I had been. But not anymore. That's what I had become to Melanie, just part of the furniture. Like her fancy old lamp she loved showing off, the one I gave her from my mother's estate. But here's the thing: lamps don't pay off mortgages. Lamps don't stay up at night worrying if their daughter will ever say thank you. Lamps don't sacrifice everything they've got to keep the lights on. And unlike a lamp, I had a choice. Melanie thought she was still in control of the story, thought she got to decide what I meant in it. But she was wrong. And she was about to find that out. She had planned some fancy brunch, one of those little social shows she likes to put on for her circle of polished, perfect friends. The ones who always show up when she flashes signs of money, like bees to honey. I stayed quiet as I helped that morning, laying out the spread just like always. Melanie didn't say thanks. She never did. Just tossed orders my way. "Can you warm the pastries, Mother? And make sure you stay in the guest suite once people arrive. We want this to feel elegant, not cramped." I nodded like I always did. It's what she expected. What they all expected. But I didn't go to my room this time. I stayed by the edge of the dining area, quiet and out of the way, just watching. No one noticed me. The champagne flowed, and laughter filled the room. Then I heard her friend, Valerie, gush over the house. "I just love what you've done, Melanie. So impressive, considering." Melanie sipped her mimosa, all fake casual. "Oh, you know how it is. Took a lot of work. And of course, it helps that I took over everything. Mom can't really manage money anymore." Then, with a big, fake sigh, she added, "I mean, she's getting older. Honestly, she won't be around much longer anyway." She said it just like that. Like it was a joke. Like I was already halfway gone. Her guests laughed, a little awkwardly, but still, they laughed. I stood still, my heart beating faster, but my face didn't show a thing. She didn't even realize I was right there. Valerie saw me first. Her smile dropped a little, and she leaned in to whisper something to Melanie. Melanie turned, startled. "Oh, Mother, I didn't see you standing there," she said, pretending to sound surprised. "We were just saying how grateful we are that you're still with us." I smiled back, calm, sweet. "Of course," I said gently. But inside, something clicked. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. For so many years, I thought love meant putting up with her sharp words. I told myself that being a family meant holding things together, no matter how much it hurt. But love without respect? That's not love. That's just being used. I looked around at the room full of people, sipping their champagne and laughing. Politely, knowing full well whose money built the roof over their heads. Let them laugh. Let them think I was fading quietly into the background. The show was almost over. After the brunch, I went back to my suite and sat in silence. Her words kept replaying in my mind: "She won't be around much longer anyway." I looked over at the stack of bills on my desk. The mortgage was due in 2 days. I had been paying it automatically for 8 years. Melanie never even asked anymore, just assumed it would be covered like clockwork. Because that's what I always did. Until now. I picked up my phone, logged into the bank, and with a few taps, I canceled the automatic transfer. That was it. A few clicks. It was strange how easy it was after all these years. Like cutting a thread I used to think was made of steel. But it wasn't. It was just habit. For once, Melanie would feel the full weight of that house on her own. She wouldn't notice right away. She was too busy being the perfect hostess, fussing over wine and centerpieces. But that silence? That missing payment? It would speak for me louder than I ever had. That evening, we passed in the hallway. She was on the phone, giving someone orders about wine pairings. She barely looked up. "Oh, Mother," she said quickly, holding her hand over the phone, "can you remind me to check the mortgage account tomorrow? Some silly notice came in the mail. Probably just a clerical error." I just smiled that I smiled softly, keeping my voice steady. "Of course, dear. I'll make a note." She grinned, pleased, and went right back to her phone call. That was always the way it went, wasn't it? She handed things off, and I handled them. She stayed carefree, while I carried the weight, her bills, her choices, her messes. But not this time. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the soft glow of the house. The house. The one I saved. The one I protected. And the one she's used as a weapon against me for years. I used to think it was worth it to keep the peace, to stay quiet, to let things slide, to swallow the pain just to keep the family whole. But now I know better. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. And today, I had made my move. Calm, quiet, and final. The first domino had fallen. And the rest would come soon enough. 2 days later, I was outside trimming the hydrangeas when Melanie came storming out of the house. Her heels clicked sharply on the stone path, and even though she tried to sound sweet, I could hear the tension hiding in her voice. "Mother, have you spoken to the bank?" she asked, sliding on her sunglasses like this was just a casual chat. "They called about the mortgage being late. Must be some kind of mix-up." I stood up, brushed the dirt from my gloves, and looked her in the eye. "No mistake," I said calmly. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The payment didn't go through." "I know," I said, nodding. "I stopped it." She froze for just a moment. I saw the shock flicker across her face before. She quickly masked it. "You stopped it? Why would you do that?" Her voice was tight now, but she was still trying to keep it polite. Wouldn't want anyone to overhear her scolding her mother in public. "I stopped it," I said evenly, "because I no longer feel comfortable managing your bills." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "My bills? Mother, we've always handled this together. You said you wanted to help. You said you'd take care of the finances." "I did," I said softly. "For 8 years. Quietly, without complaint. But now I've decided it's no longer my job." I saw it then, that flicker of panic just beneath her polished surface. "But the payment's due. The party's this weekend. I don't have time to deal with this." I stayed quiet. She let out a frustrated breath. "Mother, please, not right now. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I gave her a small smile. My voice stayed calm. "No, Melanie. I've simply given your house back to you." She stared at me, and I watched her expression tighten as she finally started to understand. Control. That was what this was really about. She had always assumed my help was unlimited, just there, on demand. But not anymore. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Instead, she turned sharply and marched back into the house, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool evening air. The first cracks had formed, not in the walls, but in her story, in her certainty. And unlike her fake smiles and carefully staged decor, these cracks weren't going to be patched up with flowers or fancy napkins. They were going to spread. The next morning, the house was quieter. Melanie passed me in the kitchen, barely looking at me. Her usual fake cheer was gone. Her smile was tight, forced. Good. She was starting to feel it. Tyler sat at the counter, scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled at me with that gentle kindness he's always had, so much awareness in a kid his age. "Morning, Grandma," he said. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, my voice light. Melanie cleared her throat. "Mother," she said after a pause, "can we talk? After Tyler leaves for school?" I nodded. "Of course." After he left, she waited until the front door clicked shut before she turned to me. Her arms were crossed, her voice low and sharp. "I don't know what's going on with you lately, but this isn't fair. You're making things harder for everyone." I set my teacup down and looked her in the eyes. "I've simply stepped back. Melanie." She cut in, voice rising. "You know we have bills to pay. You know what the mortgage costs. You're creating all this unnecessary stress." I let the silence sit for a moment before I answered. "Do you remember when you first called me after the divorce? You were crying, begging me to help save the house. You said you didn't want Tyler to lose his home." She shifted uncomfortably, but didn't say a word. I kept my voice steady, calm, not cruel. "I didn't hesitate then. I spent everything I had, every last bit of money, trying to keep this house going. I paid the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs. Year after year, I covered it all. And not once, Melanie, not even once, did you offer to help." Her cheeks turned red. "I was going through a hard time," she said quickly. "I had Tyler to raise. My business was just starting. And I understood that. I really did. I never complained. But now? Now you sit in that living room, surrounded by things I paid for, talking about me like I'm some burden you've been forced to carry." Her eyes went wide. She didn't expect me to speak to her like this. I leaned in a little, lowering my voice but making sure every word hit. "You called me dead weight," I said. Her mouth opened like she was about to deny it, but I lifted my hand, gently stopping her. "You didn't say it to my face," I continued, "but you said it. And you meant it? She froze. Her lips quivered just a little. For years, I thought staying quiet and letting things go was love. That being patient made me strong. But it wasn't strength, it was fear. Fear of losing the little connection I still had with her. Not anymore. Saying those words made something inside me feel lighter, like I could finally breathe. I stood up and smoothed my sweater. I'm not going to be your quiet little helper anymore, Melanie. I've done more than my share. I've carried enough. Her face went pale as I walked out of the room, leaving her in that thick, heavy silence. The days after that felt different. I moved through the house like usual, but I could feel Melanie watching me, not with her usual distracted air, but like she was nervous, unsure. She could tell something had changed, but she didn't know what. I didn't give her any hints either. While she scrambled around trying to figure out how to pay for her fancy party, I was at the lawyer's office finishing something important. Mr. Aldridge, the lawyer, slid a neat stack of papers toward me. He kept his voice calm, but I could see a flicker of respect in his eyes. Everything's done, Mrs. Harper, he said. The trust is active. Your money, your property, your insurance, they're all safe now. No one can touch them. I nodded and signed the last page with steady hands. And Melanie? I asked. She has no access, he said. Even if she tried to fight it, she wouldn't have a leg to stand on. You've built a strong wall. I let out a small breath. Good, I said. He packed the papers into a leather folder. You've been smart, Evelyn. Most people wait too long. I waited long enough, I replied. But not anymore. That evening, I sat in my room, my own little suite in the house, with the trust documents locked safely away. I could hear Melanie through the walls, arguing with the caterer again. Her voice was sharp, stressed. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't bother me. She didn't know it yet, but I was no longer tied to her drama. Sure, the house still had her name on it, for now, but everything behind it. That was mine again. My savings. My security. My future. All. Finally protected from her reach. Later that night, I quietly booked an apartment at a quiet retirement community across town. It had gardens, peace, and privacy. Freedom. It felt strange, not exactly joyful yet, but real. I had been wrapped up in Melanie's life for so long, I forgot what it felt like to choose my own path. For years, I was the one fixing everything, holding it all together. And she started believing I needed her. But the truth? She needed me. She'd learn that soon. As I sat by the soft glow of my bedside lamp, I whispered something to myself I hadn't said out loud in years: being alone is better than being used. And this time, I meant it. The moment of truth didn't come with one of Melanie's loud meltdowns. It came quietly, 2 days before her big party, when she finally realized she was losing control. She cornered me in the hallway, her voice sweet on the surface but her eyes filled with worry. Mom, she said, I've been thinking. Maybe we were both a little too emotional the other day. But the bank's been calling again. It's serious. If you could just cover this month's payment, just to get us through, then we can sit down and figure everything out together. I looked her in the eye. Calm. Steady. I had already rehearsed the words in my head. No, Melanie, I said gently. I'm not calling the bank. Her smile disappeared. What? I'm not handling your bills anymore. Not the mortgage. Not the debts. Not your life. The air between us grew thick. Her voice turned sharp. Mother, don't be ridiculous. But I wasn't being ridiculous. I was finally being free. You've always handled this, Melanie snapped. You're being completely unreasonable. I didn't argue. I just reached into my purse and pulled out a small flash drive. I held it up between us, letting her see it. Her eyes narrowed, confusion flickering across her face. What's that? She asked, suddenly on edge. I set it gently on the table between us. Something your son sent me, I said. She froze. The room went quiet. Tyler, she whispered. I nodded. Yes. He recorded you. She went pale. Her hands stiffened in her lap. I heard everything, Melanie, I continued, my voice soft and steady. The things you said, the way you laughed while calling me dead weight in front of your friends. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it, but nothing came out. I raised you, I said quietly. I gave up more than you'll ever realize. And even after all that, you stood there and mocked me. Used me. Finally, her voice broke through in a rush. It was a joke. Just stupid banter. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I tilted my head. No, Melanie. You meant every word. And I heard it. I stood slowly. She looked panicked, her eyes darting, searching for some way to undo the moment. But there was nothing left to grab onto. I've made arrangements, I said calmly. The financial support stops now. I've taken care of myself. I'll be moving out soon. You won't have to carry your dead weight anymore. Her lip trembled. Mom, wait. This is insane, but I was already walking away, calm and steady. The very words she'd once thrown around so carelessly were finally coming back to her. The weight she always complained about? I had lifted it myself. Of course, she didn't let me go that easily. By the time I reached the front door, her voice shot through the house, shrill and cracking. You're just going to abandon me? After everything I've done for you? I turned slowly at the door. The neighbors would hear her now, her perfectly polished mask slipping in real time. Everything you've done for me? I repeated. Quietly. Melanie, I saved this house when you were drowning in debt. I paid the bills while you played hostess to people who barely remember your name. Her face turned bright red, panic flashing in her eyes. You can't just leave me like this. What about the mortgage? The taxes? Tyler, I looked straight at her. You've told everyone you're the one handling everything, that I'm just here, fading into the background. Isn't that what you called me? Dead weight that wouldn't be around much longer. She opened and closed her mouth, like the words were stuck in her throat. Her hands curled into fists. You're being spiteful, she hissed. Cruel. After everything. You'll regret this when you have no one left. I shook my head. No, Melanie. That's your biggest mistake. You assumed I had nothing because I never showed off. Because I didn't brag about my sacrifices the way you show off your borrowed luxuries. Her voice cracked again, almost frantic now. You don't even have anyone but me. Who else is going to take care of you? You'll come crawling back when you're sick and old. She stopped talking the moment a car pulled into the driveway. Tyler's car. His face appeared through the window, immediately catching the tension in the air. He looked from his mother's red, tear-streaked face to mine, quiet, calm, done. He didn't even ask what happened. He already knew. Melanie lowered her voice to a harsh whisper as he walked toward the door. You're poisoning my own son against me. I leaned in just slightly. No, Melanie, I said gently, you did that yourself. Tyler walked past her and stood silently beside me. He didn't say a word, didn't need to. Just being there was enough. A choice. Clear and solid. Melanie looked at him like she didn't recognize him. Her voice cracked as she tried one last time. Tyler, she's manipulating you. You don't understand what she's doing, he finally spoke. I see a lot more than you think, Mom. For a second, something flickered in her face, real hurt, maybe. But pride pushed it down. Again. I opened the door and stepped outside into the warm afternoon air. Tyler followed me. Neither of us looked back. Neighbors watched from their porches as Melanie's voice echoed behind us, angry, desperate, unraveling. And I never raised my voice. I didn't need to. That evening, the house behind us felt like a chapter closed. I drove Tyler to a little diner not far from the retirement apartment I'd just booked. We sat quietly, just the two of us, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time, peace. We sat across from each other, barely touching our food. Neither of us said anything for a while. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy, like we were both carrying things we hadn't said for a long time. Tyler was the first to speak, Grandma. He said softly, I've been meaning to talk to you. I looked into his eyes, waiting. I know what she's like. I've known for a long time. The way she treats you, it's not okay. And I stayed quiet when I shouldn't have. His voice shook a little with guilt, but I gently reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You're still young, I said kindly. You shouldn't have had to deal with all that. He shook his head, that's no excuse. I should have stood up to her, especially after I recorded that video. I didn't know what to do with it at first. But then I saw your face when you watched it, and I knew I had to give it to you. A lump formed in my throat. My sweet grandson, he had finally seen the truth. I'm proud of you, I whispered. And I'm thankful. But then he said something that caught me off guard. I don't want to live with her anymore. Not after this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I want to live with you. His words hit me hard, not because they were a burden, but because they were full of love. He wasn't staying with me out of guilt or obligation. He chose me. I'll have my own place soon, I said gently. It won't be big. It won't be fancy like that house. He smiled then, really smiled, and I saw the little boy he used to be. I don't care. I just want peace. I want to be with someone who respects me, and who I respect. My eyes stung with tears, but I blinked them away. I had already cried enough over that house. This was different. You can stay with me, Tyler, I said firmly. But there are rules. He nodded quickly. Anything. No money goes to your mother. None. I won't let her drag you back or make you feel guilty about her problems. His shoulders dropped, like he had been holding that worry for far too long. Agreed. For the first time in years, I felt something powerful, control. Not over anyone else, over myself. My life. We walked out of that diner into the cool evening air. And for the first time in ages, the world felt big again. It all unraveled faster than I expected. As soon as I stopped helping, the calls started, like a dam had broken. It began with the mortgage company. Without my money, she was already months behind. She didn't even realize it. The gentle reminders quickly turned into harsh warnings. Then the credit card companies started calling, letters marked urgent began stacking up on that fancy marble table she once loved to show off. She tried to keep up appearances, like always. She dipped into her tiny savings, paid one credit card with another, hosted dinner parties like nothing was wrong. But it didn't last. The banks didn't care about her parties or her expensive shoes. They wanted real money. And she had none. Without me, even her so-called friends started to disappear. At first, they made excuses. Then they just stopped showing up. The dinner parties kept getting smaller, quieter, lonelier. I didn't hear this from her, she never called me. I heard it from neighbors, from little whispers around town. She was too busy trying to fix a mess she never learned to clean up on her own. One afternoon, Tyler and I were unpacking boxes in my small but peaceful new apartment. He paused, phone in hand. She keeps calling me, he said quietly. A bunch of times every day. I watched him carefully. What do you want to do? He took a deep breath. Ignore it. I don't owe her the life she wants anymore. I nodded, my heart aching in the best way. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He had become the man I had always hoped he would be, strong, clear, and no longer easy to push around. The apartment was small, but it was mine. No one barged in with demands. No one told me how to live. Every bill, every chair, every key, it was mine. As I placed another box on the kitchen counter, Tyler looked at me and asked, "Do you regret it, Grandma? Walking away?" I glanced around our new home, breathing in the quiet. "No," I said softly. "Not for 1 second." Melanie still believed this was temporary. But I knew better. This time, I was never going back. She thought I'd come running back when things got tough. She believed that once life got hard, I'd cave in and return. But what she never understood was this: I didn't leave because I was mad. I left because I was done. And being done, that's real freedom. Weeks went by. The mess I walked away from was still swirling around, but I wasn't stuck under it anymore. That storm was hers now, not mine. Melanie tried everything. She called, she texted, and even showed up at my new apartment once, crying like she always did, using that same old guilt. But I didn't open the door. I didn't call her back. She wasn't looking for a fresh start, she was looking for a lifeline. But I wasn't offering rescue anymore. The strange thing was, I didn't feel angry. Not anymore. Anger is heavy. And I'd already carried too much weight in my life. I wasn't going to carry that too. One quiet evening, Tyler and I were sitting on the balcony. The city lights were starting to twinkle as the sky darkened. He turned to me and asked softly, "Do you still hate her?" I let out a slow breath. His question settled in the air like a soft breeze. "No," I said gently. "I don't hate her. She is who she is, and I forgive her." He looked a little surprised. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting," I added. "It just means I've stopped letting her take up space in my mind. She doesn't owe me anything, and I don't owe her either. Whatever debt there was between us, emotional or otherwise, it's paid. All of it." Tyler nodded, his face thoughtful. "You're stronger than I am." I smiled a little and said, "No, sweetheart. Just older." I took a sip of my tea and felt the cool air brush my face. That old bitterness I used to feel? It was gone. What was left wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I gave my daughter everything I had. And now, I've finally given something to myself, something she never could. Freedom. Melanie will have to face the results of her choices. That's hers to carry. As for me, I finally carry nothing at all.